Today, let's talk financial advising, retirement and tax strategy. Where to put your money, the good, the bad, and the ugly. 'Cause today will help you build your legacy with the fly on the wall. Fly on the wall. Fly on the wall.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Iron Horse Financial Podcast, Fly on the Wall. Just Margot and I today. How are you, Margot?
Hey, all right. Pretty good. I have my voice back.
Whoop, whoop. I'm sure everybody at school is thrilled.
They were so thrilled. One kid said, "I'm happy for you," which I was like,
Sad for me, happy for
yeah.
you.
All right.
Yeah, well, at least he was honest. He didn't say he was happy. He said, I'm happy for you. Well, I'm happy for us too. So we're talking today about tariffs, what they may mean for you. And I think a lot of people may know what it means, but not necessarily how it may impact us individually. So that's what we're going to talk about. Are you having conversations like this at school? Do kids care about stuff like this, or do teachers care to enlighten kids about stuff like this, I should
well,
say?
I mean, I'm sure we have to be pretty darn careful about the things that we say. I mean, right now it was interesting because in my American history class, we are right at the time period of the 1920s, which is when a lot of tariffs were starting to come down. That's going to, fix everything. And we talked about, the positives, the negatives of tariffs and all of that. And I just think people have to better understand how all of it works.
Yeah.
How it can do some good, but it can also backfire if you go too far.
Right.
All those things.
Well, without getting into like which side of the aisle we're on, do we think they're good? Do we think they're bad? I don't know enough about it, admittedly, to know what for sure is the right balance. You probably, just because of your experience with history, have a better understanding of that than I do. But I do have a good understanding of what consumers can do, how they can start thinking about, all right, what are the potential impacts to me? What things should I be thinking about doing? So first and foremost, let's talk about what is the end result. I think we may have a general concept of, okay, here's what they are. 25% tariff is what was announced a few weeks ago now that was going to be placed on Canada and Mexico. I think China was 10%, and it took less than 48 hours. People kind of freaked out. And then 48 hours, it was like, just kidding. We got to stay on that. There's a delay for 30 days because agreements were being met. So sometimes tariffs are, hey, we think there's some unfair trade practices, which was not really the case here.
Or to even just muscle in things that you want done, maybe even with something else, and that's how you get it done.
Yep, which is more the case here, right? This was more of a leveraging opportunity to control the border and get rid of some of the illegal immigration, the drugs that were coming in. So this was more of a leverage play. So to clarify, the importer is the one that pays the tariff. So if I am importing things to the US and I get hit with a big tariff, well, then that eats into my profits. I either have to eat that and that digs into my profits, or I have to pass that on to the end consumer, which is going to be the price hikes. And if price hikes go up, then we have things to consider like, is that going to drag down consumer spending? What's the overall effect to the economy? Are companies then not as profitable? Do we have more inflation to worry about? So those are the key areas that when we think about tariffs, and if they do get enacted, then what does it really mean? That's probably the piece that we need to be thinking about as consumers of what that really means.
Absolutely.
So although I don't know what the reaction is going to be, what actually is going to be put in place, what's going to happen after the 30 days, is it going to give us leverage to stop some of these, things that we want to use it for leverage? Let's talk about how consumers can protect themselves. And I think first, contingency plans, right? We just need to plan for, worst case scenarios. So tell me, one of the benefits I think of this podcast is I get to get your feedback or Emma's feedback on like what's the general thought process that, your normal consumer would have that's not nerding out on, the end result of the economy on this, but what do you think about when you think, how am I
Well,
going to protect
so
myself from this?
I was telling you today, I've got a Diet Coke addiction, which I know when you look at me, shock, she drinks Diet Coke, like most people that drink Diet Coke. But so like the tariff, like Canada, we import a ton of aluminum from Canada, which I know we paused Mexico, but did we pause the tariffs?
Yeah, it went at 30 days too.
Okay. I thought it hadn't yet, so I maybe didn't catch that. But a ton of our aluminum comes. So me on Sunday, I'm like, I have to go buy Diet Coke now. And I bought a couple of flats of it. And then one I was taking to school and I left it in my car and then it exploded in the freezing weather. So it backfired a little bit, but that was one way I was trying to prepare as a consumer was buy it now.
Avoiding worst case scenarios. I don't want my Diet Coke to cost more. I like it.
I
Contingency
will
plans.
say one of my other friends, his brother was talking about, I can't remember what industry he's in, but as a business, they also had prepared for the tariffs. And I wish I could remember what industry, but they knew the announced tariffs were going to hit them pretty hard. And so they wanted to pre-order a ton of the materials that they were going to need. Now, unfortunately, what brought it up was he went without a Christmas bonus because the business, they were like, I'm sorry, we got to do this to buy this stuff before these tariffs hit. So I think a lot of people are trying to prep for different things. I think also you got to consider a need versus a want. Is my Diet Coke a need?
Yes. Yes, it is. I think it is. As a fellow pop junkie, although I'm Diet Pepsi, 100% a need.
Yeah, like I don't think anybody wants to see me without it, but
yeah,
I
agree. You drink it straight out of bed though. Like you wake up and you drink a Diet Coke right away. Like there's no coffee, there's no buffer. There is a Diet Coke being cracked open off your nightstand before your feet hit the ground.
Correct.
I laugh because I used to do that until I drank coffee, and now I'm like,
I just can't do
people
coffee.
that drink pop regularly.
I can't do it.
I get it. So the overall consensus there, though, that thought process is how do I protect myself? And I don't know quite what the reaction is going to be. I don't know how the economy is going to react. I don't know how people are going to react. Is there going to be a run on Diet Coke and everybody's freaking out? So contingency plans, right? One, and this is just with anything, anytime that we think I may need funds in the short term, you better have an emergency fund in place. The last thing you want is to have to go pull funds from a mid or long-term investment account, because if you do have volatility and we're going up and down, what if you need the funds right when it's down, right? If it's a mid or it's a long-term account, well, then I don't worry so much about the volatility because I don't need it right now. I've got time to let it do its thing and it can ride that out and it'll in the long term be fine. But if it's short term and I need to pull out $5,000 or $2,000 or even 1,000 or whatever, if I need money for all 4 tires on my car went out or my furnace crapped out, or there's a million little things that pop up that's like, dang it, I now need money that I hadn't really accounted for. We don't want to have to go pull from anything that has up and down. Then I'm locking in those losses if it is right when it's down. So an emergency fund in place, which is kind of back to basics, right? Are you a fan of Dave Ramsey? Do you?
I am. I'll be honest. When I got divorced, I got my rear end handed to me financially, and it's what got me back on track. And the emergency fund, I couldn't believe what a difference that made in my life to be prepared and be able to it puts you ahead of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It gives you flexibility and it gives you some control.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, right? We don't want so much sitting in cash that we just erode it from inflation. So 3 to 6 months of expenses is about normal. Now, if you deplete it, if you use it for something, you got to replace it. We got to have it there to utilize. but an emergency fund in place. The other thing that I would look at is diversification. This is something I see all the time. When we do analysis on somebody that's coming in as a new client, one of the things we always look at is, okay, let's get a really good understanding of exactly where you're at now. And the number one thing I think people are really surprised to see is they own all these things, right? They think, well, I own this fund here and this fund here, and I own this account over here. And it's really, yeah, you own all these things, but you own the same stuff over and over and over again. And so you may think you're really well diversified, and really you've got 50, 60% of all of your assets, maybe in one or two sectors of the market. When I say sector, I mean like, is it mostly in financial services, or is it in real estate, or is it in tech companies? That exposes you to volatility a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The other thing is international. We've got a few calls the morning of the news is talking about, here's what's going on. We are proactive with a lot of that. We will look at it and say, okay, we think international is going to get a little volatile. So why do we want more exposure to international? And we'll rebalance some of that. So there's things that we're always doing, but there's, from a consumer standpoint, diversify, have your emergency fund. And then it's not the worst idea, whether tariffs are on the agenda or not, if we know how the economy is going to react or not. We're coming off of 3 years of record highs in the market. Eventually, that can't continue.
Right.
So creating a buffer against loss in your portfolio, having a portion of your funds that can make money when the markets are up or down, or a portion that's just protected and has a buffer against loss, is something I believe really strongly in.
It's also probably, like you're saying, you own a lot of different stocks. I remember when I first switched to you, I had like one over here, one over here, one over here. You're also paying all those fees too, aren't you? Like where
It just depends on what you're in, but yeah, you could be.
Not only get one person's eyes to go, okay, you're really not diversified, but also you're paying fees to one place.
Or you might be, if you don't really have a solid understanding of what you own, there could be commissions and fees. We see that a lot. Like, oh shoot, I had no idea that I got charged a commission on this up front, and then also was paying fees on the back end. So just having an overall understanding of exactly what you own, knowing that you're diversified. What you don't want to have happen is just, well, it's something that's always worked for me. I've had this traditional stock bond portfolio, and not actually know if you're diversified or not. Now would be the time to really dig in and say, let me understand what I own, and then get some expert advice on, is there something that I should do to kind of safeguard my assets and create some kind of buffer there in case we get into a pretty volatile period. And then I think the question is, how do we put this in action? What do we do? Well, I encourage everybody to have a written plan. I'm sure as a teacher, you can agree, right? If you are like, well, I have an idea in my head, it doesn't always, you don't always follow through, right? So written plan. Do you, just like in your family, or some of the people that you know that are maybe later stages of their financial life, do you think most people have written plans?
No.
Yeah.
Do I wish they did? Yes.
Not that you're talking about any
Not talking about any
particular family or personal experiences. I think that's true. I always ask whenever I do an educational event, I ask for a show of hands, like who has a written plan. And usually the folks that are proactive in coming to an educational event are a little more savvy, right? They maybe have been a little more intentional with some planning. And still, I would say it's like less than 10, 15% of the room. And that, I think, allows you, one, to highlight any holes. First of all, you have a written plan, pretty easy to see, like, where am I missing something? But you also then can address any potential worst case scenarios. Like, what is plan B here? If things don't go as planned or the way that we're intending, if we get derailed a bit, then what? What do we do?
Well,
So
and
I think that's
having
important.
somebody like you, I know when, we met with you on a couple things, so we didn't necessarily know the holes. And so to get a professional that goes, what about this? What about, things you don't really think about if you don't know that you need to
Right.
include in the plan.
I think about that with anything I don't know. I think I don't even know what questions to ask. Like, I
Yeah.
think about building the office and somebody would come in
Yeah.
and say, well, what do you want here? And what kind of electric and what kind of lighting do you want here? I'm like, I have the electrician that walked us through our office. I mean, Brad and I looked at each other when he left, and I was like, I have no clue what he just said to us.
Yeah.
I have no idea what even to ask. Like, what things might I not like that I wouldn't know I don't like it until it's already in here. So having some guidance, he was wonderful. Like, we eventually just said, I just tell us like what you've seen other places that you think I'm not going to like. And he walked us through, how to really make decisions. And that was so helpful. It made me think about like, that's probably how people feel with anything that they're doing,
Yeah.
right? You go to build a house and you don't know, you go to, you got to have your car fixed and you're like, I don't know what you just said. My options are for fixing this. That sounded like a lot of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want with your finances. It needs to be something that's easy to understand, that's transparent, and somebody is making you aware of, here's some things you might not have thought of. How do you feel about that? What would you want to have happen in this case? So that would be my action items, I guess, on if we are all in agreement that regardless of what happens with tariffs, we may see some kind of consumer impact. We may see some kind of reaction in the markets. Then we create a buffer, we get our emergency plan, we diversify, and most importantly, we know our current situation. We have a written plan for basically worst case scenarios. I think that's as prepared as we can be.
Yeah. Well, and you're on top of it. I know, you know, here's a list of PCRs. We're a lot of investment
So
advisors.
PCR, portfolio change request. Margot is the one that handles all the back end stuff, the things that I don't have enough attention to detail to make happen. That is you, dear friend. So thank you for
Well,
that.
I fill out the paperwork, but you're the one that goes, all right, hey, I've got client A, B, C, D, E. And yeah, we've got them in too much international, with different things going on. Let's change this. How many advisors sign people up for stuff and they just let it, well,
Right.
hey, you were
Hope that
this.
works out for you.
Yeah, I don't know. That's, I think, what I've been probably most impressed is how many times you're constantly sending me something to go, all right, we need to change this clients. I'm looking at this. I don't like the way that I never had mine do that before. So
Well, I think more importantly than me doing that, though, is the team of money managers where they're doing that all day long. Like literally, our team of money managers, the firm that they work for is in the top 1% of all firms in the nation for growth of new accounts. That's such an impressive statistic that I don't think people really understand. So we have a team of people. All they do all day, every day is manage what is in those portfolios. So even if I wasn't saying, hey, I think we need to make an adjustment here, they are managing the portfolios themselves. So it's like a double layer of protection where my job is to put the plan together. If I think the plan needs tweaked, then I will adjust the portfolios. But then on top of that, you have an entire team of people that's managing it. And that's where I think people really start to feel some peace of mind about, I know that I don't have to worry about this because I've got a team that's on it. I
yeah,
know that regardless of what I'm seeing on the news or what happened today, we have contingency plans. Somebody is adjusting based on what is happening, and it's not something that individuals have to be stressing over, other than to fill their trunks with Diet Cokes. I can't help there. You'll just have to plan better next time and not let it freeze and explode, which my daughter also did in her new car.
who
Not
would have
Emma.
thought me and
If
Ed?
Emma was on here, she would say, not me. It was the dirty sister, but Eva. Who let it explode all over the roof and then just left it there. Was just like, I'll clean that up sometime, someday. That's Eva.
Yep, gotta love her.
That is Eva. All right. Well, that's all I have for today. We will be back next week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. We just show up whenever we want, I feel like. So,
I like it.
hey, we'll be back sometime. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
That wraps up another episode of the Fly on the Wall podcast. Join us next time as we continue the conversations and bringing you behind the scenes in the world of finance. And don't forget to stay connected with us on your favorite social media platforms and subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And we will see you next time.
All matters discussed during this show are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed are solely those of Iron Horse Financial Services and staff. All topics covered are believed to be from reliable sources. However, Iron Horse Financial Services makes no representations as to its accuracy or completeness. This commercial shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or advisory services to residents of any other state other than Kansas or otherwise permitted. Topics should be discussed with your financial advisor prior to implementation. Advisory services offered through Iron Horse Financial Services, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas. Insurance products and services are offered through Iron Horse Retirement, an affiliated company. Iron Horse Financial Services and Iron Horse Retirement are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.